This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Damion Lupo, coming to me from Arizona. Damion, welcome to Rising Tide.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So tell our audience a little bit about Damion Lupo.
Uh, well, shoot. I mean, we can start back when I was in Alaska judging polar bears in the Arctic Circle. I grew up there, and that my last job that I actually had up there was making sure I didn't get eaten by a polar bear when I was washing dishes and taking out the trash. So, kind of a strange way to exit your homeland on the way out, having polar bears in the rearview mirror. But it's kind of what it was. But beyond that, that my entire life has been about disrupting things and doing things differently. So when I was 11, I hired my parents to drive me around buying and selling Nintendo games back with classic Nintendo because they told me we didn't have any money, and I didn't like that. So I started a business back when I was 11 so I could have a little bit of scratch to play with, and ultimately that's sort of, I think that was the beginning of me doing things differently. Like when I started a bookstore in college and they threw me out of school because I was putting the bookstore on campus
I
out
read
of
about
school
that.
or
Yeah.
out of business. Yeah. So,
Got a knock on
you
the
know,
door of your dorm room?
yeah, they pretty much called me in and said, shut it down or we're kicking you out. And I said, I'll be back to you in 2 days. And 2 days later, I was finished. I paid for school that week, and I left. And I realized I was not supposed to be there. Like it was
Mm,
just, when you realize what you're really good at and what really matters, and you fight against it, life is pretty miserable. Even if
yeah.
everybody else is telling you that's great, good job, you did good grades, and you got a good job, and you got a good house, and you hate your life. So I think we need to acknowledge what's true. We were talking before the interview about reinvented life, about the book I wrote in
Right.
2012, and with my best friend, and the big question there that you get out of that book is asking about the truth, and the
Hmm.
question is, what is true? And I think that that's the single most important question that we can answer, especially as we're transitioning, whether we're doing a business or whether we're changing our life, reinventing it, if you will. It's simply acknowledging the truth, and most people aren't willing to go into the truth because it scares the living daylights out of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to circle back a little bit with the book. As I showed you before, I have this book sitting right here on my little standing desk, and spent quite a bit of time in it. And I've got some things that I want to touch on, but tell us a little bit. I mean, I had an interview yesterday, and I asked the question about entrepreneurship. Is it nature or nurture? So are you born with that trait, or is that a learned trait? I'm interested to hear your take on that, or is it a
Well, I think
combination?
there's a well, I think there's maybe another N called necessity sometimes.
It's mother of
Just
invention.
yeah, the mother of invention. I mean, I never said that before, never even thought about it, but certainly I think that if you're in certain environments, there is a nature uh, of your genetics, perhaps. But I also see a lot of parents where they're entrepreneurs and they are pushing, and their kids end up being employees with
Yeah,
safe, secure,
yeah.
six-figure jobs, so it's the perfect environment to learn stuff, and then other people like me. My dad was military, my
Hmm.
mom worked in a school, and I came out and I said I'm going to start 43 businesses. I mean, I didn't say that, but that's what's happened.
That's
So
right.
you
Your
know
inner voice was saying that.
yeah, it was just like, this is what you got to do. And every time I tried to get a job, it didn't work. They'd fire me. I got fired as a volunteer when I was working on a political campaign 8 years
Wow.
ago. Last time I actually had a job, they said, we're going to let you find your success somewhere else. And I said, you're firing me? I'm a volunteer. I'm a full-time volunteer. You can't afford to fire me. They fired me anyway because I was trying to win. And that's what you're an entrepreneur if you're hell bent on winning, and
Yeah.
you've got that fire and that hunger, and you're not willing to go into a system and just kind of go through the motions. I mean, that's a very different headspace. I don't know if it's something we're born with or if it's something we see. I think something can trigger it probably in almost anybody. And a lot of times that is necessity. It's where something becomes so compelling that you can't not do it.
Right. Right. I I think that maybe there are certain traits that we're born with. Maybe aversion to risk or a willingness to take risk, or I mean the perfect example you mentioned with the child of entrepreneurs that wants to have this kind of the safe six-figure job or whatever. That there may be a reason even in the nurture part of that said, I saw my parents on this roller coaster. There was feast or famine roller coaster, and I don't want to go through that again, or something to that effect. Or my dad worked 80 hours a week, on his own business, and it was never home type thing. But I love the idea of this, just born out of necessity, because really some of the things just go out the window. When you are at the area of the deepest need, deepest, darkest, point you're at. And let's speaking of that, I mean, what a great segue. I mean, talk about some of the kind of the ups and downs and the roller coasters of the ride you've been on, because I think that would be very interesting. I mean, it's almost like I had an interview a few weeks ago with a guy that I said, your life kind of reminds me of the life of Walter Mitty, the movie. And I'm thinking the same thing here. You've got so many experiences, wrapped into one. So touch on some of those kind of highs and lows and how you transition through them.
Well, what's interesting is I think the current generation, a lot of the folks that are say 20 to 30 right now are afraid of the roller coaster. I think there's a lot of bashing or whatever on the millennials, and I think a lot of it's because they're afraid. A lot of them, in large part, have been so helicopter bombed
Yep.
into a place of avoiding any type of confrontation or risk, or being told that they're a winner with their trophy even though they didn't
That's
keep
right.
score, like all that BS.
Yeah.
Like, what are you teaching these kids? And so they're afraid of actually going out there because they have no concept of what it's like to compete, to lose with humility. I remember when Matt Leinart lost the national championship
Mm.
against Vince Young. I think it was like 2006, and he comes to the press conference and he says, "Yeah, we're still a better team." Like there was just he had no humility, and I'm like, "You lost, dude. You lost. What are you thinking?"
Yeah.
But he was probably, I mean, who knows what he was raised like. The reality is, once you go through the roller coaster of winning and losing, you start realizing that unless you got chased by a polar bear, like you're not going to be eaten by anything.
Right.
And you start to realize, okay, I can lose money or I can make mistakes, and that's actually how I get smarter. I get faster, I get better, and you start embracing them. And the whole key to life is being able to trust yourself to adapt. People are afraid of making a mistake because they don't have the experience of understanding their own ability and trusting their own ability to adapt. That is the key to building the confidence that sets you free. If you don't know how to adapt, if you haven't done it, you don't believe that you won't die, you'll never be free. I don't care how much money you have in the bank, I don't care how many businesses, how many jobs, it doesn't matter. That's the roller coaster value, if you will. It's the growth, and it's the deep-seated belief that you build in your muscle that you'll never get if you just stare at a book or avoid those experiences.
Mm.
You have to go through them.
There's a little sound bite that I've heard on some other podcasts talking about the comedian Jim Carrey, he's talking about his dad, and he says, my dad could have been a great comedian, but he chose instead to take the safe path and be an accountant for a company, worked for them for 20 years, and lost his job. And I think that kind of the moral of that little soundbite is like, you can fail at taking the safe routes. So why not go ahead and just go for broke? And I love that kind of that whole philosophy that says it's not foolish. It's more of a calculated risk. So
It,
yeah.
yeah, and there's this whole idea of failure is huge because I think a lot of times if we're listening right now and we're thinking about failure, we don't want to be a failure because we think failure is this noun. And instead of embracing the idea of failing as a gift from the universe, from God, it's a wrapped up way to expand and grow. The
Mm.
only failure that you're ever going to be is if you wake up one day and you say, "This is my last day, holy cow," and you're living in regret. To
Yep.
me, that's you becoming a failure. And that's personal to me because I watched my dad do it right before he died. He
Mm.
looked at me and he said, "There were so many things that I wanted to do." And that's brutal when
Yep.
somebody's on their dying, in their dying days, and they say something like that, because that's not just them making a mistake. That's them realizing, wow, I failed at this game of life by not participating all that I could.
Mm.
That's it's sad, and that
Yep.
there there's this idea that things are hard, and then discipline is tough, and sticking with one thing because now everything we're chasing everything. We're a bunch of
Sure.
drunk squirrels chasing a bunch of shiny nuts. Decide if we're going to have a life of discipline, if we're going to stay narrowly focused and we're going to drill in and we're going to choose, or if we wake up with regret. I assure
Hmm.
you, regret is 10 times more painful, 10 times harder. It's the worst possible thing ever.
Yep. Yep. I, I really appreciate you sharing that personal story, because I mean, I don't want to drill down too deep in that, but is that really a personal motivator for you? I mean, is that something that resonates in your mind and has kind of played a part in this kind of reinvented life?
There's no doubt when you have a trigger event. This is one of the things that I talk about in Reinvented
Hmm.
Life. There are moments that we get different moments of encouragement or defeat or learning, if you will, from our life, and we can run with those and learn from them, or they're going to come up in different ways. And eventually, if we don't learn them, I think we wake up with that moment, like my dad did. That for me was a nudge saying, "Hey, you know what? You're not playing full out.
Hmm.
You're almost playing not to lose, like an accountant." And I love my accountant actually. I think actually my whole accounting team, they're great. But I think a lot of people do things like going into accounting or going into things that are safe because they're afraid of the pain. And I was doing a bit of that too. It's not that hard. I mean, people are going to, maybe some people are going to listen and go, "What? It is hard." It's not that hard to go make $100,000 a year doing a job.
Right.
I mean, if you're in America, for example, it's embarrassing if you're not making $100,000 because you chose to spend your time not improving. And the problem with stopping there, if you've got more potential, is dying with potential is hell on earth because
Yeah.
you're literally about to meet the person you could have been. That's the problem.
Mm.
So I saw that when I had that conversation with dad, and it made me think there's a bigger role for me. And the role is to free people financially from the financial shackles of their life because we've put shackles on ourselves. We didn't, nobody's done anything to us. It doesn't matter whether you love Trump, hate Trump, love Obama, hate Obama. It doesn't make any difference whether you think we're in a recession or going to be in a recession. It's a choice.
Right.
And blaming anybody else is a lack of self-responsibility. That is you on you. That is nobody else
Mm.
doing anything to you unless you choose to be a victim.
Good
And
word.
that's what we've got, a bunch of sissy Mary victims running around pointing fingers at everybody. And hey, you know what? You want a better life? You better point the fingers back at you and do something about it.
Yeah. I love the way you frame that, and I want to kind of touch on that again later in the interview. But tell me right now, like, go back to say 2007, 2008. You were, driving Ferraris and living life pretty high and fast, and kind of Fast and Furious was a movie about your life. And so, what happened when the kind of the whole real estate recession hit, and how did that really change your trajectory?
When that happened, for those that haven't heard the story, I had built up a $20 million portfolio, and I was driving my Ferrari, the same one I saw in Bad Boys 2 that Will Smith drove, because I thought if you buy Will Smith's car from a movie, then you become Will Smith. So in my mind, that was the next thing. You know, you have millions of dollars in the bank, and you have all this stuff, and you go, cool. Now I want to be the A-lister, and this is just all ego.
Now
So
wait a minute, the
2000.
actual car or the same model?
Well, the exact. I mean, it wasn't. I didn't go to the movie set and grab the
No,
car. I
yeah,
went and
okay,
found
yeah,
the car.
that's
Yeah,
yeah.
it was the Ferrari
I wonder if they'd
550. Yeah.
auction that off or something. There you go. Sorry.
You know what? I don't think so. Actually, funny story. I got that car. I was all excited, and it broke a week after, 3 days after I got it. Light went on. It was a $10,000 oil change and fix because they had never changed fluids in a 5-year-old car. So,
Wow.
you learn things. You learn,
Yeah.
wow, an oil change isn't necessarily $30. It might be 10,000. Just different experience.
That's right.
And I mean, that was, it's part of the journey, realizing things are different than what you expect, and you have to be able to adapt. So when that happened, the biggest shift for me was realizing that when I lost the 20 million portfolio and my net worth went from 5 million to negative 5 million
Mm.
literally in 12 months, every project I was doing went negative. I went from thinking I was going to make a million or two on each of like 5 or 6 projects to losing over 7 figures on every single one of them.
Wow.
Foreclosures, like everything went bad. So I said, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it means I'm a failure. It means I'm worthless because my net worth and my self worth were totally
Mm.
tied together. I had to rewire and rethink, but
Yep.
first I just pretended it didn't happen. And I think a lot of times that's what we do because we don't want to admit I was wrong. I'm a big dummy. Like the
Mm.
universe needed to crush me because I wasn't listening. And at that point, I did some deep work with help. And here's a huge thing. A lot of us go through crap and we think, oh, you know what? I don't want anybody to know. I don't want them to find, if they find out that I'm stupid, that I made a mistake, then they're not going to like me. And so we tend to stay isolated. I've had a lot of people come up to me after Reinvented Life and they'll say, wow, I didn't realize that. I mean, I figured somebody maybe had gone through some of this stuff, but I didn't realize, wow, you went through the same thing I did.
Yeah.
So you find connection and relationship when you actually are willing to be open. And I went out and I started asking for help. And that was the big transition, the big reinvention, asking for help from people, my friends, a therapist, like all sorts of stuff to figure me out so I could not do the same thing. Because if we don't get to the
Mm.
truth, we're going to keep repeating it. It's like a damn merry-go-round of our
Yes.
life.
And so after that transition happened, I mean, so there was a segment in your book that I read, and it might have been the same time that you said, but I still have that Black American Express card. Was that part of the I'm still fooling myself, or was that a am I mixing two stories, or is that kind of
That,
the same time period?
so one of the things that I noticed about myself, observing myself, and this is part of the work I did with the therapist for a couple of years, was being able to observe myself and think about my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that, and there was a moment, it was after the melt where things were falling apart. It was right before American Express canceled my card. And I was sitting with a friend of mine having dinner, and I pulled out my American Express Black, and he'd known me since the very beginning when I had nothing and I was starting fresh in real estate. And I said, I still got my card. And he said, atta boy. And I said, yeah, I'm still worth something. And then I was in Costco within a month, buying this giant bin, like the pallet, as the, everything's on a pallet. I got a pallet of toilet paper. And I checked out, and it was like, it was like, I don't know, $40. And it was declined. And I said, how can a pallet of toilet paper be declined? I have an American Express Black. You can buy a jet. I mean, I'll show you. I'll go buy a jet right now, and you guys are going to feel stupid. They said, well, you're not buying toilet paper. And I said, well, that's a bummer. So when I called American Express, they said, you know what, you've hit your limit. I said, it's a black card. There's no limit. They said, you have a limit. I said, what's the limit? They said 16,000. I said, what's my balance? They said 16,000. I said, you're shutting me off. And they said, yes, sir. And I said, what? So this was,
Mm.
again, the universe saying, you're out of control. You literally need to chill and learn, because you're not learning anything. You're just becoming hedonistic.
Mm. Wow. So after that kind of transition, so you moved to, I mean, you're at the bottom of the barrel in essence. So what happened then? What was the kind of the path back out, and what has that led you to today?
So the path back out was getting fired as a volunteer. And here's what happens. If we're not fixed inside, we keep doing things externally, and we can blame people. Like, I pretended I didn't get fired, but the reality was I wasn't a very good volunteer or employee because I was trying to break everything. So I went through the process of finally acknowledging the truth. And the truth was I was focused on a whole lot more. And there wasn't a deep seated why except for the more. It was just more cash, more stuff,
Mm.
more, more women, more booze, more whatever. And so the transition was saying, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Who am I? And when I answered those things, and then after dad died, I realized I'm here to break that those shackles on people that. And I mean, there's literally millions of people that have put
Wow.
themselves in financial jail. And we choose this, and then we go, dang, I'm stuck. No, you're not. You're staying stuck. You
Mm.
literally can take one step. But people go, well, if I'm going to do this, I gotta do it Tim Ferriss's way. I'm going to get myself out in 4 hours, and I'm done. And I say, stop reading Tim Ferriss's book. I like Tim Ferriss,
Yeah.
but there's this other four-letter word called work, and people don't want to do it. And so I just started working really, really hard. And it doesn't mean I was out there digging. I mean, if the hardest workers were the richest people, then the people in the fields digging dirt
Yep.
would be
For sure.
multimillionaires. That's not true. But you know what? There is a way for you to hustle, and not just Grant Cardone, like, let's get everybody's money and put it in my pocket. But I'm talking about figuring out your purpose, not
Mm.
necessarily your passion, because passion just means you're running enthusiastically, maybe in the wrong direction. I've
Yep.
seen that a lot.
That's good. I
It's
gotta
really
I
about
gotta write that down.
well, there is a purpose. Stephen Pressfield talks about this in The War of Art in his new book. There is a purpose that we're here. My purpose is to empower people to be financially free and not financially stuck. That and sometimes I'm not very passionate about it. Sometimes I am, but I know it's my purpose. I know I'm here for that impact. And what's fascinating is that when you're on purpose, the financial benefit is a side effect. What we were taught is go get this job or go do this thing or sell a widget on Amazon
Hmm.
and make money and everything's good. That's not true, because what are you doing? You're trading your life for something that doesn't really matter.
Yep.
So the question I ask people, all the time is what matters for you? Why are you here? And I hear people all over the place because they don't know. They never asked the question. They've never been willing to say, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go for it. I might be wrong, but committing to something is where providence happens. And people hesitate to commit because of FOMO, because all those shiny nuts out there,
Yeah.
because we've become human squirrels. I mean, truly, we're afraid of making a mistake and choosing wrong. So we choose everything, which means we choose nothing.
So unpack the whole idea thing. I mean, I love the idea, that we're driven by kind of the fear of missing out, but unpack this passion and purpose thing. So even if I find my purpose and it's something I hate doing, how do you kind of find that equilibrium, in or would you say, when your theory is, when you find what your purpose is, you won't hate doing that? I mean, so what is kind of the unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, see, it's a great question. I used to live by the philosophy that Aristotle was right, and I would, I mean, and I'm not smarter than Aristotle by any stretch of the imagination, but one of the things he said was the purpose of life is happiness. I totally disagree.
Hmm.
I used to think that, so it's why I ordered all the wine and all the king crab and all this other nonsense, making me feel happy. It
Mm.
was triggering a bunch of chemistry and hormones in my system.
Yeah.
You go out on a whole bunch of dates and a whole bunch of pretty girls look at you and they like you and whatever, and that's what you're driving your life towards. There's a lot of passion there, but all that is a bunch of success moments.
Mm.
And what we're missing is the fulfillment. Because if you're talking about, you look out there, I mean, would you say that Winston Churchill would have been better off if he did something that he was passionate about and had a good time with? Or was it important for him to be purposeful about why he
Sure.
was on planet Earth? That was a hard freaking life.
Yep.
And it mattered. And the question is, Brendan Burchard says this, we're here to live, love, and matter. And and so what is it that we are doing and who are we that matters? It's a fulfillment piece, because even if you're struggling, and you will struggle if you're on purpose, you struggle through this process because there's nothing perfect about it. And oftentimes you're going into the darkness. Pressfield talks about going out on your hero's journey. You go out into the darkness and you figure it out and you trip over yourself. You bleed, you get scars. It's cold. Like, there's a process. And then you go from being an amateur, which is you tripping all over the place, to becoming a pro. That's his
Mm.
current book he talks about. So I'm a big fan. And that's the difference. When you become a professional, you fall in love with the process of improving and doing it. When you're an amateur, you're thinking about game time all the time. When you're a pro, you're always in that mode.
Mm.
You're literally
Wow.
focused on Michael Jordan probably practiced more than everybody else combined on his team. I mean, he was
Yep.
always honing hours and hours before games. We have to be willing to fall in love with the process, not just the outcome. People are obsessed with the outcome. When I get this, then this will happen. If this, then I'll be happy. Like, that is the wrong approach, because even if you have the moment, even if you hit it, it's gone.
Yep.
And then what is that? That's your whole life, that one moment? That's what people do when they say, I remember back high school, our football team, state champions, 1992. And I
Still
go,
got the letter jacket
wow,
on.
they still have the leather jacket on. Or the girl that was the prom queen, and she's like, oh man, I peaked. I peaked at 17.
Yeah.
And I say, golly, stop with this. This is the
Yeah.
success life. What is it that is your purpose here that's the rest of your life? It's a process of mastery, Kevin. It's about the entire process where you fall in love with it and you lose yourself in it.
Mm.
That's the idea. That's the key. Fall in love with it, lose yourself, and everything else will just unfold in front of you. But you got to be willing to take that risk. And I think it's worth it.
So you've had to walk through that journey, that hero with a thousand faces journey, to find where you are, and now that you've arrived. So tomorrow morning when you get up, or maybe Monday morning, whatever, what will you be doing? What is your life purpose, and how is it manifested in a business that you happen to run today, or have been the founder of?
So I wake up every single day thinking about how I'm going to ask questions of people and figure out how to help them answer those questions. So I have a belief when I work with clients or when I work with people that are potential, here and there, very rarely, but occasionally, I'll work with people and mentor them.
Hmm.
And the reason it's very rare, there's two reasons. One, it's very expensive. So most people are not willing to commit, even though it's going to be very inexpensive because everything's going to change. The other reason is I am brutal with my drill. I mean, I do a root canal that makes most people cry because the questions they're so honest. I mean, we
Yep.
dig into the truth. And so I do that whether I'm talking with somebody that I'm helping with their idea of retirement and getting honest about that, or whether I'm just helping somebody figure out what the next thing in their life is, them going into a place of truth where they're on purpose and they're not just chasing another 5 or 10,000. Like, you're not going to be happy if you just have $10,000 a month as passive income. I hear people say that all the time. Or they're real estate
Yeah.
investing. Once I have 20 houses, I'm good. Or once my business does this, I I wake up going, I get to ask questions, and I'm going to help people find the truth because it's sitting inside their dang brain.
Mm.
I don't know what their truth is, but I know I get to ask some questions today, and those questions are going to set people free. It's going to piss them off in the process, most likely, but that's okay because it jars them loose out of their stuckiness
Right.
and maybe suckiness in their life, depending on, what day it is. But that's what we're doing. We're shaking people free.
Now, is this more in the life coach sector, in a business coach sector, in a financial coach sector, or kind of a combination of all the three?
So here's what happens. Everybody that I speak with almost every single time thinks that money is the answer. So we start with talking about the money, and then if somebody hangs in long enough, we drill into what's really driving them, and we realize, okay, the person that showed up to me a year ago that said, I've got 5 million bucks. I'm 42 years old. I make about $800,000 a year, and I need to make more money. That's the solution. And I said, really? All right, let's figure that one out because you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And he said, what? So he thought he was going to talk about some investing and things. And what we did is we got him clear on what was really true about his life. So it's sort of this weird thing. We think money is the solution. We think it's the problem. The reality is it's below that. We have to drill down. And most people aren't willing to ask the very, very hard questions. World-class coaches, therapists, mentors are the ones that ask the most intense questions, the most powerful questions, because they also know that you have the answers. And so this happen. There's a process of both working with people's money and a lot of their money thinking and getting them clear, because once they have the money philosophy down and their psychology down, the actual physical money, the bank accounts, the assets, takes care of itself. It really does. But it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many houses you have. It doesn't matter how much your business is producing. If your psychology is wrecked, you're toast
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yep. What a great. I mean, I love the way that you answered the. I asked the wrong question and you answered the right one. And so, I mean, what a way to frame that in such a way that you really kind of went to kind of what DEFCON 1 on me there. You went to the deep level of the question, and I was asking it at a surface level. And so that kind of leads me to a note that I wrote down here to touch on that was in your book that and let me just read this really short paragraph, and I want you to comment on it because this really grabbed me. I have like stars and big circle around it or whatever, but it said the biggest problem. This is in the chapter talking about simplicity near the end of the book. So it says the biggest problem with the complexity of having more stuff as opposed to the grace and peace of living in simplicity is that it requires our world to be structured in such a way that consumerism must continually expand and grow, or the economy shrinks and recession happens. Thus, encouragement of consumption happens at every turn all around us. That could not be more true. And it's even the idea, it's like your personal economy shrinks and you personally are finding yourself in recession, not the environment around you. But touch on that just a little bit, because that is such a great I mean, just that little paragraph has so much meat in it, and it kind of it trails on what you just touched on.
It's fascinating because when you write things and then you keep going and then they pop up years later. Like, I don't think I've read that for the last 8 years, 6 years since we wrote it.
But still
And
true.
it's still true. It's actually more true, and it's more true because I have a deeper understanding of what we're talking about.
Mm.
Like, sometimes things come out of our mouths and we go, "Huh, okay," and then we hear it later. We're like, "Whoa, what was that?" So so let's just think about this right now. We've been in a booming bull market.
Yeah.
We're recording this, and it's 2018. Been in a bull market for like the last 8 or 9 years since the Great Recession, and most people are still in a private recession in
Mm.
their brains, in their lives, because there's more and more out there, and they're chasing ever more, and they're never satisfied because and it gets so complex. I have a friend who's a doctor. He and his wife are both doctors. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of income, and 5 or 6 cars is not enough. It's got to be another car. And I look at that, and there's this sense of unhappiness because there's a missing piece of actual simplicity and the joy of the simple. And it means a million different things. Being in a hot springs in Japan for me a year ago with my best friend, just chilling out, just talking. Probably my favorite thing I've done in the last 10 years.
Worth a million.
And it was worth everything.
Yeah.
Because it was about relationship. It was about the releasing of tension. There was not a complex, there was no forcing. It was an honest relationship, just talking. So what is it that we're trying to get or get to? And if we're willing to sit still for a minute, we may be there. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, what am I chasing? I'm comparing. Why? Because I'm nervous about being found out. I'm feeling like people are judging me, and maybe I need more, and that way I'll be worth something because my self-worth is tied into what I have, and it's never going to be enough. I mean, right now I'm seeing people in Bentley SUVs, and I go, what are you doing? Like, you want an SUV, but now you need to spend 300,000 or 400,000 on an SUV because it's never enough. Why?
Yeah.
Because they're insecure. I mean, seriously, I doubt that it is making them 5 or 10 times happier than a Lexus SUV. And people, it's a never-ending thing. So it's good time to question, why am I doing these different things? Why am I consuming more to make myself feel better? Is it making me feel better? Would less, maybe more, will make you happy? Maybe it's the right choice. I don't think that's the case most of the time. I think simplicity is the answer. Try it. See what happens.
Yeah.
I bet you're going to have a different experience.
I mean, I love the way that you kind of wrap this up, and just the idea of so often, we see things online of people just saying, hey, I can 10x your business. I can do this. I can, we can, you're going to go from making 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month, and just buy my course, and then Ty Lopez image pops up on screen, and you say, I have 5 Maseratis in my garage, all leased. I just rented them for an enterprise. Just for the video shoot type thing. And I'm not throwing Ty under the bus, but just this whole idea.
I'm going to throw him in front of one of his
better.
Lamborghinis. Put Ty in front of one of his Lamborghinis and drive over. And I've heard a lot of good things. I have friends that hang out with Ty, and they go, he's a good guy. So nothing against Ty, but you know what? If you're thinking, oh, that's cool, Ty's got the life, I need the Lamborghini, I'm going to get his course. Most of what we are seeking is a better version of ourselves. We're looking for something because we're not quite happy with who we are, and we're missing that it's not the Lamborghini, it's the deep work on ourselves. We're looking for the hack to the outcome instead of the process through the journey. That's what we need to be finding and seeking out. The importance of the mentor, the coach, the Ty, the Grant Cardone, the Brendan Bouchard, the Kevin, whoever we're looking to is somebody that's going to be real in relationship with us, not just selling us something so that we can feel better with more consumption. It's somebody that's literally going to ask a question and encourage us on the right journey. It's not that outcome. Forget about the outcome.
Yep.
It's literally, what is the journey that we're on? It's not, and it might be, but it's probably not a garage full of Lamborghinis and Maseratis.
Sure.
That's you comparing yourself to the Kardashians and a Facebook reel.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at everybody's highlights, and it's a bunch of ads. They're trying to trigger your damn brain, your reticular activator and your amygdala, and like, they're pinging you, trying to get you stuck. It's like why CNN and Fox, every damn thing is red alert. I mean, Kevin, we have red alerts on ESPN now because our brain is attached to these breaking news and events. Right. It's like, I better pay attention to this. It's totally distracting. Yeah. I have a no ding policy in my life. You put a ding on a phone around me, I'm going to throw you out because you're going to see me go nuts. I don't like the distractions because it knocks us off course of our purpose. And these things are meant to do exactly that. So you want to change your life? Change your dings.
I'm going to get a t-shirt that says no more dings right here. And I'm going to say, this is Damion Lupo. He said this. I can't take credit for this. Well, let me ask you one thing you said that I wrote down too, is you said most of what we are seeking is a better version of ourselves. Is that true, or is that where we need to find ourselves? Because is that where, as a coach, you're leading people to, or do you think they actually are aware of that?
I would say a better way to say that would be that we're looking for a truer version of ourselves. Truer meaning we're actually going where we are
Mm-hmm.
already. We're going deeper. When I asked the question about what was true, I was trying to figure out what was true about what was driving me. We've often probably heard the question, what is your vision? What is your mission? What are your values? I was looking back and I went, my values was more. Like there was nothing else.
Yeah.
And when I really dug into it and said, what do I care about? Let's just scratch, let's blank slate my life. Let's start from nothing. What do I care about? And I realized I care about self-responsibility.
Mm.
That is deeply important to me. That I am self-responsible, that I'm not blaming anybody for anything. But if fires burn down my house because some fire lightning hit some forest, man, I'm still not going to blame anybody else. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to take this experience and run with it. That became a driving force, and then the impact on other people. So when I think about 10x growth, it's about 10x impact. It's not about 10x, like 10 times as many cars.
Sure. Yeah.
I was really asking what's going to drive me, and here's why you have to have values. Values are going to be what filter people and stuff, processes, businesses, activities in your life. If you don't have values that are deeply personal, that you say, this is my lens, you'll be all over the place. You'll be doing this and that. You'll say yes to almost
Yeah.
everything. You'll be
Yeah.
freaking Jim Carrey. You mentioned Jim Carrey. You'll be
Sure.
Jim Carrey. Yes, man. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes.
You got to be willing to say no most of the time. Warren Buffett said, and he's right, that that's the difference between success and super success. It's that super successful people say no to almost everything. Warren Buffett invests in almost nothing. When he says yes, he's all in.
Yep.
He says no to almost everything. We need to do the same thing with people, opportunities. People come to me and they go, I got this business. And I'm like, great, show me. I look at it and I'm like, cool, good luck with it. Not for me, because I know what my values are. They gauge who I'm going to work with, who I'm going to have as a
Mm.
client, who I'm going to talk to, who I'm going to
Yep.
be around. the These values will help you have a very simplified, very easy life experience where you'll know what your rules of the game are. If you don't have those, you're at the mercy of everybody else hitting you with dings all the time, and you go, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, we want to enter the no ding zone right here to kind of close out our time together because your time is valuable. I appreciate you just spending that actually an extended period of time with us this morning. But so wrap us up today with kind of I've tried to add a section on the end of our conversations lately with almost like a micro course. If you could do a micro, here's like kind of a like 3 points that I want to really drill down and leave our audience with, and you virtually can choose the topic. I mean, if you were, is this a kind of a pre-coaching session or however you want to frame that, but just leave us with two or three really salient points that are related to a specific topic that say if I want to leave you with something, this is what we're in an elevator and I want to leave you with something that's really mindful, really is going to be a game changer in your life in the next few days. Can you unpack that just a little bit?
Yeah, and I'll do that by thinking about what I would do if I could go back when I started to
Mm,
myself and give
great.
myself the advice from the wisdom that you get with years of experience. Like the saddest thing is going to a graveyard and you just see all this wisdom underneath the dirt, and you're like, oh, and they're done. Felix Dennis, one of my favorite authors, and had all this wisdom, and he's dead. And I mean, if you have a chance, read Felix Dennis. What I would suggest for everybody, the beginning is pick somebody that you respect, that you listen to, that you'll actually act on. That person is called mentor. That
Mm.
person is likely and should probably be either balder or grayer than you are. In all likelihood, if you hire a 25-year-old coach, you're not getting anything except regurgitation from them. They don't have any experience. I mean, nothing against being 25. I was there and I thought I knew everything. But finding somebody with wisdom that can be present with you and help you to make a choice of the environments you go into, and then encourage you and safeguard you from your fear of failure. If you are able to if you find that person and you can leverage and lean on them, what's going to happen is you'll trust in making a decision and making a mistake, and you'll realize, wow, it didn't kill me, nothing ate me.
Yep.
And then you'll do it again. I would tell myself, fail faster, because that's how you're going to grow. I wouldn't be afraid of going and asking the pretty girl across the room out. I'd say, you know what, ask all of them out, because you're not going to be, they're not going to eat you. Like, we think that these things are going to eat us, like that is literally the outcome, and so we're afraid. Having somebody say go do it, it's why coaches can be so valuable, because you don't know, and you're basically leveraging off of their belief and their trust, in taking a step forward when we're afraid that our world's going to fall apart.
Right.
I would find that person and leverage off of them and then continue moving and don't let go. I got into the most trouble when my ego took over and I let go of the mentors and I thought
Mm.
I was, the biggest, smartest, invincible, bulletproof guy. My world came apart.
Mm.
Make sure that you have people that you respect that'll tell you the truth when you're not willing to tell it to yourself.
And no is not terminal. Is your analogy of going across the room and asking the pretty girl out. I mean, a no is just another step to. It's kind of like failure. You're failing forward and you're growing from those experiences. So really unpacking the mentor. I mean, it could just be a one-step process. I mean, if mentorship is the key, if finding somebody that's further down the path that you really respect and trust and will follow, then and that's the way you want to wrap this up. If we're in the elevator, that what a great way to kind of package this, this conversation we've had today. And is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you want to touch on? I'm going to have your book links in the show notes, but how can people find you? And if there and anything else you want to close us with today?
People can find me at DamionLupo.com. You can dig in more. Here's one thing that I'll leave you with. Smoking hopium is what most people do for their strategy of their life. They hope and they hope and they smoke away and then they go, well, I'll see what happens. And hopium is not a strategy. It's a disaster. Doing the work is where it's at. Not hoping, doing work. The 4-letter word we talked about. Go do the work. That's where the magic is. That's where the juice is. And take the doobie out of your mouth, out of your life. Let it go. Smoking hopium is not going to get you there. I promise. It's never going to get you there. But that's where a lot of people are stuck, and they're waiting for it to happen to them. Well, it is going to happen all over you. You got to do it.
I'm gray-headed. I've lived a few years, and I've never heard stop smoking opium. I mean, that is also a great T-shirt right there. Great T-shirt idea. Damion, thank you so much for just taking your time today. It's just a thoroughly enjoyable time. I mean, I could talk to you all day long and just keep asking questions and keep drawing this gold out of your mind. But I know you got things to do, and I actually have another engagement that's right after this interview. But thank you for really just inspiring us and encouraging our listeners and just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Damion, have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin. Been a pleasure.